Let's get rolling, right? So obviously I am not Jeff Terzo, but this is his information. So overall, and let me back up a little bit. So we'll talk about just the overall feature sets when it deals with Just Add Power, with the individual or even the entire product selection that we have for Just Add Power, as well as a brief overview on how to set up a Just Add Power system. So going back to contact, my name is Al Dumboya. If you want to reach me directly, my email is al@justaddpower.com. Imagine that there's only one Jeff, there's only one Al. So just remember at Just Add Power. So I don't do this part of Just Add Power anymore. I'm in other avenues within Just Add Power, last minute replacement for Jeff Terzo, but I want to make sure that you have his contact information. This is actually his own deck, so we can make sure that we're streamlining communication. But if you need anything whatsoever when it deals with product information, design questions, or even design help, you can reach Jeff directly on his cell phone number or even directly on his email. Obviously, we're in the age of virtual meetings, so you have his Skype address there, but we're able to do any kind of platform when it deals with any kind of meetings individually with you guys, with SnapAV or even the individual location. So whatever kind of help that you're going to need, you're going to be able to get that from Jeff as well as anyone else on the team. So going on the overview of Just Add Power, anyone that's been with the company or have used the product in the past, you're obviously going to know that we've been in the game for so long, right? It's been over 25 years of doing some sort of HDMI distribution. Roughly about 15 years ago is when we came out with the AV over IP pieces, the blue boxes, we call it, the 1G and the 2G product. Has nothing to do with cellular signals. It's all about generation. So got a lot of people asking about 5G and everything else. This is all about generation, not cellular signal or anything like that. But been doing it, and this is all Just Add Power does, just AV over IP distribution. Very simply, you're talking about a single transmitter for each one of your sources, so a 1-to-1 ratio, as well as a 1-to-1 ratio with every one of your displays that you have in the system. So different ways that you can do distribution. You are able to do point-to-point distribution when it deals with Just Add Power. In the name, when it says Just Add Power, depending on the device that you're using, you will need to provide power with the individual pieces, either via PoE, or you'll be given the option of being able to provide power directly onto the units themselves with a power supply. Power supplies do not come with the individual units, but we have the specs on our website. On the support side of the website, if you just type in power supply, you'll see the specs of the different generation of product that you'll be able to use for a solution like a point-to-point. And this particular image that you're seeing here, we're using the 709 P2P, which is specifically made for point-to-point, which allows you to just provide power on the transmitter, which is that 709, which will also provide power for your endpoints, in this case, a 509 or even a 508. We also have those specs directly on there. But going back, so you can use Just Add Power to have a point-to-point distribution if that's what you need. So 1-to-1 or even 1-to-many, whatever way that you're wanting to do, you're going to be able to do that. So by adding a network switch to help with your distribution, kind of making your network switch into an HDMI splitter. In this case of going 1-to-many, you can use an unmanaged switch. All receivers and displays are looking at that one transmitter, and you're just splitting up that signal throughout to how many receivers that you have on the endpoints. Overall, what we really get into is having a many-to-many, right? So multiple transmitters, multiple sources, all being managed by a gigabit managed network switch, with multiple receivers for multiple displays. And by going, I guess, multiple to multiple or even many to many, you're going to be able to, or you're going to need some kind of control system, control software, or even commands that's going to tell your endpoints, your displays or receivers, which transmitters or which sources to look at any given time. And I'll touch upon that with all the drivers that we have, or the different ways that you can utilize a control system or switching capabilities within the system. So very dynamic when it deals with just that power. Whatever configuration that you're wanting to do, you're really going to have the ability of doing it from one to many to many, whatever configuration. We're always remembering that you're using a transmitter per source and a receiver per display. So not using any kind of matrix box, sticking in the 8x8, the 16x16. And you know that a lot of times you have wasted endpoints when it deals with that. You're just building your system as you go modularly when it deals with just that power. Whatever it is that you're going to need by stacking network switches or having a single network switch, you're going to be able to do your video distribution and all have it be in one system. Distance really isn't a limitation when it deals with just that power. So your typical data properties, you're looking 1 meter between your just that power transmitter to receiver, and we're talking about a point-to-point solution in this way, or transmitter to your network switch is still that 1 meter. If you need longer distances, there are ways to either stack your network switches via fiber, or even for a point-to-point solution, or even having your, or even having a fiber in between your transmitters and receivers, you'll be able to extend your distances. So really not going to have any kind of limitations when it deals with distances. So since we're doing AV over IP, we don't have to worry about wall panels, couplers, patch panels, or even keystones. If you're able to have data and it's connected to your network switch or even connected to your just add power pieces, you're going to be able to have video distribution. Very simple when it deals with the infrastructure. At least a category 5E doesn't have to be shielded, and you're able to do video distribution, even 4K video distribution. So we'll jump into the feature sets that you're going to find in, if not all, a majority of the pieces that you're going to have with just that power. So obviously this can work in your commercial setting, your residential setting, and I think I saw on CE Pro just recently the Resi-mercial, I think is the new moniker that they're given for bars, restaurants, things like that, that you're going to be able to get out of just that power on the majority of the generation. So either your 2G Omega or even your 3G that you're seeing with 4K distribution. So instant switching happens instantly. And that's all done with the power of either your control system or even your switching application that you're going to be able to use. You're roughly about 16 to 20 milliseconds in your switching, which is roughly about the same when it deals with the latency. So no black screens or warnings or handshaking issues when you're doing the switching. It's going to be pretty instant when you're seeing it. So I just have an example here on how that happens. Having a fully dynamic video wall, being able to switch the sources anytime that you want. As you're noticing, no blank screens, no black screens, no handshaking issues. As fast as your end user or whomever is switching, they're being able to actually see what's happening on the display end. Video walls are integrated to every one of the Just Add Power pieces, so no extra control box, no extra added software needed to actually create video walls. It all happens on the receiver end, as simply as just jumping into the web GUI and saying which one of the receivers are which part of the video wall. You're going to have the ability of gap and bezel compensation. So really, this is going to allow you to bring your residential displays within the project itself. So any kind of budget cost elimination that you're trying to do, you're going to be able to use, I guess, lower price models to build into a video wall. You're also going to have the ability to rotate the images and things like that. within, and you'll see some of those feature sets when I go on through this. But independent to any kind of control system, or even with the help of a control system, you can just jump into the web GUI as long as you're within the network and you're able to create a video wall as big as you really want it to be. Now, once you get into a fully dynamic video wall, you're going to be using a control system to help with those dynamics itself. So this is an example of Great American Ballpark in Cincinnati, Ohio. One of the first major resi-mercial systems that are out there. Being able to use a control system and telling your video wall with the different panels in there which part or how the configuration is going to be, which sources you're looking at, and what the dynamic is that you're wanting to do. No matter what the dynamic is, you're going to have the ability to do that through Just Add Power. This is just an example, another example of that same bar restaurant that's in Great American Ballpark. The integrator was pretty creative, being able to hide the columns that are within that bar and restaurant, wrapping it around with LEDs. I don't think the video gives justice how big the video wall is, as well as the video panels, but very creative. And you're going to see a lot of other examples that have kind of played on the ability of creating a video wall around a column with either commercial or even residential kind of displays. Another example of video wall being used, just being creative around it, creating almost like a cube kind of a setting around a bar or inside the middle of the bar itself. Pretty sure this is down in Texas, one of the bars right by the Cowboys training facility. But just having this integrator figured out different ways, different dynamics, different solutions for the bar itself to have multiple video walls throughout. So a cube video wall by the bar, displays that are within the restaurant bar setting, video wall in your background, as well as a number of video walls that they're used in outside. Obviously, it's not pretty right now with all the ladders and everything else, but this opened up roughly about 2 years ago. This is, I guess, pre-construction, pre-grand opening, I should say. Portrait video walls. So I talked about rotating images being done on the receiver side of your Just Add Power piece. Being able to go from 180 to 360, whatever way that you're wanting to do the rotation that you need for the display itself with either commercial or even residential panels, you're going to be able to do that. One of the uses of being able to rotate images or even have different size panels within a solution is a mosaic video wall, and also kind of tie into one of our newer pieces that we announced not last year, but the year before, the warp engine that will allow you to do different degree angles, which just brings a full dynamic to mosaic video walls. But this is just an example. Still in Cincinnati, Ohio, integrator was able to use different size Sony panels for this brewery that's in Cincinnati. They use it for a number of different settings, from being able to push out any kind of specials that the bar might have, any kind of guest DJ that they have, or even having sports on the displays themselves. So using it in different ways that they want to. Image pool, all built in. Being able to see what's actually happened on either the receiver end or even on the display end. Great for the integrator to troubleshoot a system if something is going down, if they're able to remote into the system itself, or even great for the end user to know what's happening on other displays which they're not in front of. all being done within the web GUI, outside of the control system, all built into Just Add Power. Image push, really simple way of being able to utilize digital signage without using a digital sign machine, or even having it a special digital signage display or even panel. So really the way that we look at it is no wasted space, no wasted attempt to really portray the message that the end users want to do. You're able to do that with just a quick image push built into Just Add Power. Flexibility when it deals with Just Add Power, so the pieces can be decentralized if needed. Ideally, you're seeing a lot of rack systems, but you're also going to have the ability to add a Just Add Power transmitter or receiver as you grow the system. So the perfect example would be a centralized Just Add Power system that's piping out video distribution throughout the house. However, within the family room or even the bedroom that might have a either streaming device or even a Blu-ray DVD player, being able to have control in that location connected to a Just Add Power transmitter being sent throughout the system. Every one of the receivers will be able to see this, as long as you're able to have category 6 or a network drop into that location. You're either able to add a transmitter to be part of the system or even a receiver within the system. Thinking about commercial wise, looking into either huddle spaces or even auditoriums that are doing presentations. It doesn't matter which one of the transmitters you're going to use. It's just a matter of what makes sense for that location itself. And you can mix and match based on what's needed for the solution, room-wise or even complete solution-wise. Distances, kind of mentioned this. You're able to go with your long distances through fiber, either fiber between stackable network switches, or even using media converters in between transmitters and receivers to extend those distances. So really not seeing any kind of limitations when it deals with being able to be part of the Just Add Power system. There is a feature, and this is more, I guess, product-based or SKU-based, that allows you to do USB 2.0 over IP. This is strictly for control. So KVM management, being able to control endpoints or control computers and do KVM switching if that's what's needed. Just a simple example, connecting a computer to the right Just Add Power transmitter, being sent to multiple Just Add Power receivers, and having full control of that computer no matter where you are via that USB 2.0 over IP. Couple examples of the Nike flagship stores from Miami as well as New York that are utilizing this in the commercial setting, having one room, centralized room that has all the receivers, transmitters, I should say, and having the receivers behind each one of the LED panels, but then also making interactive display for your end users, being able to either customize any kind of solution for them, from shoes to merchandise, but then as well for your IT guys to have everything in a centralized location if anything goes wrong or they need to check up on things. On-screen display, whatever way that you want to utilize it when it deals with volume control or any kind of messaging that you want to have, that is built into each one of the Just Add Power pieces that you're able to display with a simple command. Another feature set when it deals with being able to have control. Sometimes it's a dirty word or a bad word in the integration world, CEC. But you do have the ability to have CEC over IP or CEC commands to control your endpoints, either transmitters or even receivers. You do have the ability built in RS-232 or serial to control your endpoints. And you're also going to have the ability to control your endpoints through IR. So really utilizing all capabilities of endpoint control from CEC, RS-232 serial, or even the IR over IP. In order to utilize IR over IP, you are going to use what we call the flux capacitor, the IR dongle, which will give you IR command for any displays for control of that endpoint. Other feature sets when it deals with just that power. Now we're going to talk about audio. So all the different ways that you can use audio throughout your system, from your AVP models that allow for audio embedding, down mixing, whatever it is that you're wanting to do, you're going to have the ability with the AVP model. Send in to stereo or even full HDMI to your endpoints. You're going to be able to do that with the AVP models. Multi-channel audio, so the hi-fi model, the 717, you're going to have the ability to use the HDMI loop out for your AVRs, or maybe you just want to use the loop out for a display in the rack. Whatever way that you want to utilize that HDMI pass-through, you're going to be able to do that for audio or even video. Having the ability, and this is going to be specifically to the 3G models, being able to have multiple resolutions within your system without downgrading any one of your sources whatsoever. So you're able to have a 1080p display, a 4K display, or even a 720 display within your solution, all being pumped through on your source end by a 4K source. So each one of the receivers have a scaler that are built in that will allow you to upscale or downscale the resolution that's needed per display. So you're not going to have any blank screens, or even not have the ability to see whatever sources is in the system. And your switching is still going to be instantaneously. It's going to be instant switching from source to source to the display to display. It's all going to be done within the Just Add Power eco. Just a quick little demonstration on how easy it is to actually jump into the web GUI and actually tell the receiver what kind of video is going to be needed for that display, or resolution that's going to be needed for that display, so you can pump it out which way it's needed. Built into each one of the 3G devices, the 4K pieces. 4K HDR, full high dynamic range. So you have the ability to either pass through or even pull out or draw, we call it, the HDR setting. Whatever way that you're going to be able to do that, it's fully supported, but you're able to either upscale or downscale based on what's coming in. Another feature set, Plug, Play, Present, says it's a newest update. It's been in the system for a while, but this allows you to kind of be independent from a control system. So with the ability of logic control, it's auto source sensing. So being able to plug in directly to a receiver, to a transmitter, and having a logic control command sent to the receiver to tell that receiver to either turn on the display or even turn to the correct input that Just Add Power is in. You're going to have the full ability to do that without using any kind of control system. So really great for your huddle spaces. No remote needed, no iPad needed to control your AV within the room itself. It's as simple as using any one of the transmitters, even though we're using a wall plate transmitter here, an example of any one of the receivers behind the TV. Someone comes in with their computer, MacBook, whatever it is, connects directly to the transmitter via HDMI, auto sensing that there is a source on that HDMI, will send a signal directly to the display, telling it to turn to the correct input that it should be for Just Add Power, and you're able to do whatever presentation that you want to do. Likewise, once you unconnect or you disconnect from the transmitter itself, logic command or control settings will be told to the display to either shut off completely or go to the previous input or setting that was onto that display itself, all being done independent from a control system, making it very, very simple for your end users to be in and out and have their presentations without any kind of issues. Just another example of this being used in your resi-mercial setting in an auditorium. Obviously, there's going to be different resolutions when it deals with this particular example, being able to set those resolution standards within the displays and the receivers themselves. Auto sensing whenever there is a source connected to the transmitter, and being able to go back to whatever setting that was on there previously. So now I'll jump into your different transmitters that you're going to see within the 3G series. So you have a number of different transmitters within the 3G series. I think I mentioned the Hi-Fi, the 717. And you're going to be able to find each and every one of these pieces of information and specs on the support side of the website. It's either going to be justaddpower.com/support, or if you go into the main website, Just Add Power, you're going to hover over support, where you'll be able to click on the support link that's going to get you to every one of the drivers that you're going to be able to use, every one of the spec sheets, as well as any kind of comparison when it deals with it, to make it easier for you as SnapAV or even Volume specifically, or AV, AllNet, or even MRI, to choose what's going to be the right solution for the project itself, or even for the dealer. So all that information is out there. It doesn't have to be, it's not locked, it's not password protected. This is just information that you can have. Anyone has access to that. But breaking down, what are the different options that you can use? Probably the most popular right now that we're seeing with the transmitters themselves is the 707 PoE. Very small. It's the basic of them. Doesn't have any USB over IP, doesn't have the mic line in or outs, and it doesn't do stereo extraction. So if that's what's needed on the endpoint, you're able to do that. However, if you need USB 2.0, if you need any kind of audio extraction, you do have the right transmitter that you can use. And these can be mixed and matched throughout the solution itself. Just a little roadmap on how to choose the right one. You will find this on the support side of the website. Probably the first question to ask every time when it deals with a transmitter is, how is audio going to be distributed? Is it going to be used from Just Add Power? So you need to extract audio directly off the Just Add Power transmitter, or you're going to extract audio directly off the source. So you don't need Just Add Power to do that. And that's going to allow you to pick whatever receiver is going to be needed. I need KVM endpoint management, then I'm going to use the AVP model. So whatever is needed, you're going to be able to have the opportunity to choose the right transmitter for your solution. So in the play of the AVP model, the transmitters that I introduced previously are single input transmitters. So this is pretty much the exact same AVP model in a rack mountable 3 input version of it. So it does have its own power. So you don't have to provide power either through a network switch, PoE, or even through a wall plug. It does have its own power. And it does have its own coolant fan, but it does have all the available functions of being able to do the AVP model itself. Roughly about 1 U in a rack, but being able to have 3 transmitters within. And then you have the very simplified version of the transmitter in a 4 input rack mount version, which is the 747. It's exactly the same as the 707, which is the most popular. It's just 4 of those within a rack mountable usable transmitter, 4 inputs. And here's the 718 AVP. Touched upon some of the different, I guess, extractions or hardware features that are on there, from mic line in, either mic in or even audio in, whatever way that you want to utilize that. It's all 3.5 millimeter. Being able to extract 2-channel stereo, as well as having the ability of USB 2.0 KVM management. 717 is the one that has the HDMI pass-through. Your 707, which is the most popular of the transmitters themselves, very basic, still has the HDMI in, your network out that's going to your network switch, as well as still having the capability of RS-232, CEC, or even IR capabilities. Now we get to our specialty transmitters that came a little bit after we announced the 4K versions of these transmitters and receivers. So your 709 P2P, that P2P standing for point to point. So really specialized, being able to, even though every transmitter has the ability to connect directly via Ethernet to the receiver itself, this one will allow you to power the receivers that are on the endpoint. So if you have just a single receiver on the end, or you can have up to 3 receivers if you're using a multiple of the 509s and the 508s, which I'll introduce, but all being powered directly from the 709, not needing power on the other end, on the receiver end. You would use this 709 P2P. Great for huddle spaces, great for auditoriums, if that's what you're going to need it for. And just a breakdown of the receivers themselves. We also have wall plate options, the 707, the 717, but you're going to have different options from either your rackable or inside of a centralized or decentralized rack for your transmitters, or even wall plates. Whatever solution you're going to need, you're going to have that opportunity. And just recently announced is our sound transceiver, which really allows you to do audio distribution independent from the Just Add Power transmitters or receivers themselves. So pretty much a scaled down version of our video over IP pieces, being able to send audio to any zones that you need to, either on the transmit end or on the receiver end. Without going into any more details because of time itself, but you're going to be able to see every one of these specs that deal with this transceiver on the website, on the support side of the website. We are also able to do Dante. So the 767 allows you to utilize Dante within that commercial space if that's what you're needing. Simple web GUI that you'll be able to jump in and be able to set up Dante itself. Kind of mentioned the wall plates, the different wall plates that you have, the very basic of the wall plates, nothing more than HDMI in. Then you go to the 717 that has multiple inputs as an HDMI, as well as VGA and audio or mic in that's needed. There is a switch on there, or manual switch to say it's using VGA or HDMI. I don't have a true answer why we have that on there, because it is auto sensing. But if your end user is more comfortable in being able to use that manual switching, you're able to use that too. Then you have your 4-gang wall plate. That's pretty much your granddaddy or big daddy of multiple line ins, multiple line outs, pretty much like the AVP model of the wall plates itself. And one of our newer pieces, the Warp engine. So I talked about the ability of our image rotation being either 90 degrees, 180. This is going to allow you to do any kind of angle that you want within the project itself. This lives within the network, so you're not going to connect this directly onto a display, or you're not going to connect this directly to a transmitter. This is all going to be connected to the network switch. Kind of a play, and if you're aware of our tiling transmitter, kind of plays just like that. So it's going to connect directly onto the network switch, which allows it to see any transmitter that's piped into the system and being sent to any receiver into the system itself. So it really makes it a network piece rather than an isolated piece. Can be isolated if you want it to be. This is at our newest headquarters, being able to rotate your displays in any angle degree that you want it to be, and still have your image to be linear, or the way that it's intended to be seen. Tiling transmitter. So the tiling transmitter allows you to see multiple inputs In this case, with a single transmitter or a single tiler, being able to see 4 inputs within the system, and it's not a fixated amount or fixated 4, it's any 4 sources that are within the system, so it can be switched fully dynamic on the fly that you need it. As you're going to notice, and it's an important piece on design, this is going to take up 5 ports on the network switch. And I'll go into how you pick the right network switch, and it's all based on how big the system is. But this is going to add an additional 5 ports within the design that's going to be taken up on the network switch. You're going to notice that there's 4 receivers built in, all connected to the network switch. It also has 1 transmitter, and the way that it looks at it is that transmitter is able to see any source within the system, pumps it into the system, and shoots it out. Just a couple different examples of a single transmitter being used, fully dynamic in which way that you actually want to have those displays to be shown onto, or those sources to be shown. But you can do whatever it is that you want, from an overlay, changing the size, changing the width, whatever it is, you have full control on being able to change the dynamics of what's going to be on the display itself. Another example of a tiler being used. This is going to show you the dynamics of being able to switch on the fly. Once you see a switch happening, you're able to select where that audio is coming from. And I know that in the past, or from other kind of tiling systems, you have to be at a certain source to get that audio from it, but you can move that audio based on the display or based on the source that they're needing on the fly. That little green halo or box that you see on the switching kind of identifies where that audio is coming from, but then that can be switched by the end user on whatever control system or platform that's being used for them. You're also going to see a little play on being able to rotate images on this, and we'll be able to rotate this so you see it fully, but a normal display being able to be rotated and having 3 sources within on that single display, all being done with the tiler itself. One of the great pieces about having the tiler is having multiple tilers. So if your customer wants more than 4 sources onto the screen, all they have to do is add another tiler. And really, it's an infinite kind of possibility on how many tilers you can have. The way that it looks at it is one source or one tiler is looking at another tiler, looking at another tiler. So it just adds and adds and adds upon it. So when you're looking at this screen on the left, which gets piped in throughout the entire system, but you have one tiler that's looking at a single tiler. So one tiler showing another tiler that's looking at 4 sources, and that same original tiler is also being able to pump in an additional 3 sources within. So now you've moved from 4 to being able to show 7 sources onto a display. And the beauty of it being part of the network is every Just Add Power receiver sees this tiler, so it can be pumped into any display that you need it to be. Now we'll jump into the receivers really quick. Receivers are pretty simple. You have 3 different receivers. You have the 508. It's probably comparable as in basic wise to the 707 transmitter. The 508 is the popular of the receivers themselves, mainly because everyone just needs either just an HDMI on the output to the display. It still has the capability of video wall. It has the scaler, all the other feature sets that are built in, as well as CEC, IR, or even RS-232. That's where you see that it becomes popular. Specifically when it deals with the 509, it has a network pass-through. I think I should have an example of it, but I'll show it to you in a second. 509 allows you to have network pass-through that allows you to use one data drop within a location and have multiple Just Add Power pieces connected and seeing the same source at the same time. So it can be used for a network pass-through for Just Add Power pieces. It can be used for network pass-through for any kind of network appliances that you might have decentralized that need network access. it allows access for either just that power pieces or for any other appliance pieces that needs it. Maybe it's the display that needs IP commands sent to it, or even access to the network. You'll be able to do that with the 509. 518 AVP allows for stereo extraction, as well as that would be the receiver that you would use if you're using USB 2.0 for KVM management or control. Pretty much the roadmap on being able to choose what you need is going to be that audio management piece or even USB piece. So yes, I'm using it as KVM. You're going to have to use the AVP, or I only have one network drop and I have 2 displays that I need to be part of that network itself, or to just add power system, then you can use the 509 that allows you with the network pass-through. AVP with the USB 2.0, the 508, the basic of the receivers, no extra inputs and outputs. And your 509 that has the network pass-through for either any network appliance that needs it, or even a just add power receiver. So touched upon it a little bit when it deals with the 509, being able to see one source. So if you do have the solution that there is only one network drop for any kind of retrofits that are out there, you're not able to get multiple network drops within that location, you can do something as simple as a video wall, a 2x2 video wall, being able to see the same source, being able to have a video wall for your solution can happen with the 509. So the way that it's displayed here, 3 509s with the network pass-through kind of daisy chaining, and then the last piece, the 508. You can still use a 509, but based on pricing, it makes sense to use the 508, but still having a video wall off through one network drop in that location. So all the pieces that I've mentioned right now have been the 4K pieces, our newest generation. Our previous generation was the 2G. What we did after we announced our 3G is kind of bring in the 2G within the fold again. So really for your solutions that don't need 4K, you're still going to have the ability to use 1080, and this 2G Omega allows you to do that. So you have a number of different transmitters and receivers, and the mindset's exactly the same when it deals with the ability of mix and matching within a 1080 solution. It's what I'm going to need as an audio management on the transmitters end, or even on the receiving end, or maybe even USB 2.0 for KVM management. So your basic of the transmitters and receivers for your 1080 solution is the 705 and the 505. Being able to utilize either stereo extraction, in this case, this one adds HDMI pass-through, or KVM management or control through USB 2.0. You're going to have that ability through the 715 and the 515. And then we still have VGA. So for those solutions, maybe it's a retrofittable solution, and they're not going to be using HDMI, depending on what that source is. You're still going to be able to use VGA, so you don't need an adapter for that, as well as SDI and TVI for, I guess, a lot of times your house of worship, or maybe live video feeds that are needed for, I don't know, a club, a DJ booth, whatever it is. So you're able to pump out SDI or even TVI within your solution. Accessories, pretty simple. The first one is going to be the RS1U, which is a rack shelf, which would house your individual transmitters within the rack. If you've seen the different transmitters themselves, based on if it's a 707, and I'll use this example, 707, or even your 718 AVP, your width of it is different. So if you're using all 707s, you're going to take up roughly about 3 U's in a rack. If you have an AVP model that's in there, then it's roughly going to take about 5 U's in the rack. So the individual transmitters sit vertically, and this will fit either your 3G, your 2G Omega, or even your previous generation 2G pieces, all can live within this RS1U. And then you have the flux capacitor. So talked about the ability to have IR control, all being done through serial commands. There are drivers that allow you to convert that over, located on our website. The flux capacitor will come with all the necessary, I guess, dongles or pieces that are needed for power, as well as connection to the serial RS-232 port within your transmitter or even your receiver. Now we'll jump into the switches. Sorry if I'm going really fast, but I want to make sure that we touch upon all of this. But any questions, I'm sure you'll be able to pump that through and I'll be able to answer it. Switches. So the way that Just Add Power likes to do its video distribution is via VLANs. So what we're doing with VLANs is isolating the traffic from each one of the transmitters going throughout the system, as well as isolating the customer's network backbone. So you're not going to have any kind of interference, and that's what allows for instant switching. So a lot of your commercial infrastructure won't allow, or your IT management group won't allow you to mess around with their network and create VLANs within a network switch. In the case of that, there is the opportunity to do switching within a single VLAN. So the great thing about Just Add Power, and what's going to be different from Just Add Power and any other of your systems that are out there currently, is we have the ability to do VLAN switching or IGMP switching. So multicast switching on the fly. Either one of those are going to be able to fit within the project itself, and we're going to have the ability. These switches right here are going to be specifically for VLAN switching. We have the Cisco brand as well as your Luxel brand. I mentioned before, the easiest way, or the way that you're going to be able to choose the right switch, is how many transmitters, how many receivers, plus one that you have in the system. So port 1 on either any of the switches that you're going to use from Luxel or the Cisco is always going to be used for the network or the control system. All the other ports are going to be used for your transmitters and receivers. Obviously, you have different models for stackable switches. So it's all about how big the system is going to be, how big the system potentially can be, or how small is it going to be. That'll give you really your roadmap on choosing the right switch. Some of the things when it deals with configuring the system, and we'll fly through this really quick, you are going to use a Windows computer. I have seen your virtual machines used on Mac machines or MacBooks to control or use the software. Highly recommend using a Windows computer, even if it's one of those small netbooks, as long as it has the ability to use USB, as well as the ability to connect with a console cable. You're able to use that computer. So some of the hardware pieces that you're going to need outside of the computer: a USB to serial adapter, couple dollars through Amazon, or maybe even through your distribution channels that you'll be able to get that. Your console cable typically will come with the network switch if it's a brand new switch. A lot of times it's not even looked at, sometimes thrown away because it's at the bottom of the box, but in many times, or many ways, instances, that console cable is going to be available. I know there is a kind of a morphed USB to console cable that's available through Amazon. So it's just one cable that you're using. So whatever way that you need to, you'll be able to connect to there, and you'll have that opportunity. So obviously you're going to be using software. So there's a couple different pieces, or a couple different avenues in which you're going to follow in being able to configure a Just Add Power system. The first is going to be able to use, or the ability to use, Just Add Fig. So that's all on the support side of the website, free for anyone to download. Remember, it's a Windows computer, as well as you're going to see the ability to use all the available drivers for the control systems that are out there. So configuration wise, connecting directly to the network switch, as well as your network, if that's how you're going to do it, but you're going to have the ability to tell the software how you're doing your connection, either through the network switch, or to the network, or in many cases, not through the network, whatever it is that you want to do. But you're going to tell it that you're setting up a new system. It's going to ask you, how do you want to set it up, either through the network or not. You're just going to, pretty much, if you're good at clicking buttons, you're going to be able to get through this pretty fast. The next is you're going to create a network for your Just Add Power piece. You are going to need to know what the switch network address is, either the default or the new network IP address that you've created for that switch. That's going to be needed in order to connect to that network switch. And the software is auto sensing, so it will know which port that it's actually connected to the network switch. And in many cases, it's going to know if it's a Cisco or even a Luxel switch. You're going to need the username and password. If you haven't changed it from the default, it's going to be admin when it's using the Luxel switches. But it's a simple control and it's auto sensing. And this tells the system how many transmitters are in there and how many receivers that are in there. So once you're putting that in, you're going to also let it know if there's a potential of maybe add in an extra source, an extra display. That way you're going to pre-configure your network switch, and it allows for an easy plug and play option for any added transmitters or receivers within. But the software is as smart as you are. So whatever you tell it to do, it's going to do. So yes, I have a 2x2 system, but I have a big switch and I'm able to add more ports on there. I'm not going to use it for anything else. So maybe I might tell it that I'm just going to do a 3x3 system, even though I'm still only using 2 transmitters and 2 receivers. That way you have an extra transmitter port already set aside for a new transmitter, as well as a receiver port already set aside for a new receiver once you need it, when the system grows. Once you tell the software that, it's literally going to tell you where to plug in transmitters, where to plug in receivers. And in this case, it doesn't care what transmitter or what receiver, as long as it's in the right transmitter or receiver port. It will tell you, however, if you've plugged in a receiver into a transmitter port that's been dedicated for that. So it'll give you an error message, but it's going to say, all right, all of these ports are reserved for transmitters. I'm going to need you to plug those in. All of these ports are going to be reserved for receivers. I'm going to need you to plug those in. And you're going to notice that the ones that are in yellow are going to be isolated for the network. So not going to be used or not going to be configured for VLAN switching other than control or even network access. So you might have a bigger switch and you need network access for anything that might come in the future for a streaming device or whatever it is that you need network access for. You're going to be able to use this switch because we're going to isolate that traffic. Once you have that connected and you hit next, it's going to do its thing. It's going to recognize which transmitters are connected to the ports, kind of give you a roadmap of the models that are connected to each one of the ports itself, from the transmitters as well as the receivers. It'll lay it out as a AVP or just a regular. That way you know what it is. So your Just Add Power pieces are also going to come with a pre-config address, as well as gateway IP. All of that's going to be pre-configured in there. One of the reasons why it's done in that way, obviously, is for testing purposes, done through quality control. But also, if you have a point-to-point solution, you don't have to do any kind of configuration whatsoever. So literally outside of the box, it's plug and play. You are connecting a transmitter, Ethernet connected to the receiver, and providing power to each one of those devices. Obviously, HDMIs from sources as well as displays, and you're able to go right away. However, once you get into full dynamic switching, that's when you're going to need this configuration software that's going to allow you to do all of that. And based on the information that you've done previously that you've inputted, it's going to go ahead and configure these pieces themselves. If you have any kind of issues whatsoever, you know that you have more pieces that are in the system that aren't showing up, you're able to rescan it or clear whatever it is. So you can go ahead and, you know, sometimes the network switch doesn't recognize everything. So if it doesn't, you can go ahead and try it again. Now, once you hit next, even though we've kind of skipped a step because there is a process or even the configuration process that the software does. So it's going to create VLANs within the network switch for your transmitters as well as your receiver. It's also going to give IP addresses for each one of your endpoints based on whatever it is that you put in the software that you want it to be. Obviously, you wanted to make it outside of whatever network the network backbone is. But you're going to have that put in all that information, and it's also going to do. I don't know if I missed anything. I think that's it. But all the pre-configuration information that you input it's going to create into each one of the pieces. This is your roadmap to just add power. This is going to, after you've done that, once it's complete and it does its work within that network switch as well as on the just add power pieces, it's going to give you what the individual ports are, as well as the IP addresses to those transmitters and receivers connected to those individual ports. So what we're seeing a lot of times, and what we recommend a lot of times because of testing that you might do to make sure that everything's working correctly, is a lot of this configuration can be done off-site. So you don't have to install everything and then do this and find out that there's something wrong, wires are crossed or whatever it is. You can do this on location at your office, warehouse, whatever it is, do all the pre-configuration. However, you are going to be able, or you will want to label each one of the transmitters based on the port it is, because you're going to transport this obviously to the site of wherever the solution is. So just make sure that transmitter 1 has port 2 on it, transmitter 2 has port 3 on it, so on and down port, because those IP addresses correlate to those ports. So it's something very, very important for you to remember. But once you hit next on this will give you the ability to actually download that information so you have it somewhere safe, but it'll give you the roadmap to each of the individual transmitters and receivers within the system. The next thing is that it's going to create a static route. So this static route is going into your router. So you could use any router within the system as long as that router can use or can handle static routing. You're basically going to copy and paste this information. You're going to jump into the router itself, and you're going to input that information into the router. So what this does is any commands that you're setting, either switching wise or even full dynamic control wise, it's going to tell your router those commands are specifically for just add power, and it passes that information to your endpoints. So without having this on certain features that you have within just add power itself, without having your static route within the router itself, you are going to lose some of those feature sets. So it doesn't hurt for you to put this in automatically, but just remember, this can work with any of the network routers that are out there as long as they can handle static routes. So once you've done all that, the software gives you the ability to test out your switching to make sure that it is based on the ports and how it's needed. So you can test out all your switching before you're on location, so you're not troubleshooting once you're on location. Remember, label each one of your transmitters and receivers based on the port that it should be connected to. After that, once you've done your testing, based on just the configuration process, just add power is done. There's nothing else that you will have to do on just add power. Your only other piece that you're going to need to do is actually programming on your control side. So the 4 manufacturers that you see on the screen are drivers that Just Add Power had created on themselves. So you're able to download those drivers directly off of the website. It's 2 drivers, your switching driver, which is going to be for your network switch, as well as your endpoint drivers, which are for your Just Add Power pieces. This license key that it says, you typically have to send your IP address of your control system. That should be eliminated, and I'll have to give you some clarification on that. That should be gone now. That it should automatically give you that license key once you've jumped on the portal, but I'll give you more information on that later. But really the only thing that you're needing to do is program your system with the drivers that are based either from the that's provided by Just Add Power, or through any of the other third parties that they've created the drivers for. So directly on the website, on the support side of the website, it'll give you a link directly to the manufacturer's website that'll you'll be able to download the drivers created directly from them to control or program a control system for the Just Add Power pieces. One piece that we have that kind of eliminates the use or the need for using the control system is what we call switch please. So it's a very basic or very simple ability of switching, and all it does is switching. So you're not going to have what I call endpoint control. So like your typical control system will control your endpoints when it deals with volume, input control, or whatever it is that you're doing from either your TV or maybe jumping into your menus into your sources. This will not allow you to do that. However, if you need a simple solution of only switching, that's all I need. This is going to be built into every one of the Just Add Power pieces, and it's all web-based. So anything that has a web-based browser will be able to use this. So from an iPhone, from an iPad, any Android device, anything that has a browser itself, and you're able to jump on to the network that has Just Add Power, you're going to jump on and you're going to put in the IP address as well as switch please. You will see every one of the every one of the receivers that are in the system. You're able to label every one of the transmitters, and you'll be able to do the switching on the fly as you need it. So it's a really good solution as a backup. Maybe the control processor has crapped out within the project itself, and the end user still needs to be able to do switching, or maybe it's used for troubleshooting, whatever it is that you need. You do have a backup solution or a very easy solution that doesn't need a control system to do switching whenever you need it. Other pieces of software that you could use, third party, Just Add software. It is not a Just Add Power piece, but they make software directly for Just Add Power, and it's the media switcher. All of those links are located on the website, being able to control your system, and it's all license-based. We're at the end of the presentation, so this is just showing the versatility of Just Add Power pieces. So we definitely live within the residential world, but look at all the different ways that it's used within the commercial world or the resi-commercial world, from restaurants, bars, malls, corporate headquarters to even corporate retail floor spaces, car dealerships. So really the solutions and the possibilities are endless. You can use it any way that you want to, because we have each one of the transmitters, each one of the receivers that are built for whatever solution that you need. And it's that modular piece or building block mentality of, I need this on that source and I need this on this for this display to control that source. If it's 2.0, USB 2.0, KVM management, or very simple, I just need video distribution without any kind of special inputs and outputs. Whatever it is, you're going to have that versatility in whatever kind of solution, either centralized or decentralized. Firmware, all available on the website. So the great thing about Just Add Power is we own everything that deals with Just Add Power through Just OS, which is our operating system that you see there. So we can update the firmware anytime that we want to, add features as the system grows based on whatever the standards are out there. So everything is proprietary to Just Add Power, and we're able to just add features on existing. So you're not going to find us come out with a newer generation piece with a new feature, leaving the old generation behind. We have the ability, based on whatever that feature set is, to actually implement that into our current generation pieces. Just a quick little example on where you can find your firmware. When you download the JAD configuration tool, that will have the updated firmware built in, so you don't have to do this extra. But if you have a current ongoing second generation product that's out there, or maybe you have a third third generation 4K project that's out there from 2 years ago. And some new feature sets were introduced by Just Add Power, and you want to add those feature sets within the system. All you have to do is just download the firmware update directly off of the support side of the website. And it can be as easy as just jumping into each of the individual pieces and uploading that updated firmware. We do offer demo kits, and that can be registered directly on the website. So just your main justaddpower.com website. I think if you hover over the support tab, you're going to see a couple different options from training, as well as being able to utilize demo gear. Once you do that, you're going to input your information. And this is all coming directly from Just Add Power. Once you've used that demo gear, and I think we give a window of about 2 weeks that you can use that demo gear, you send it right back to us. Or if you want the capability of purchasing demo gear, that would be done directly through Just Add Power. It'll give you that information as well. Support team, we are based in Largo, Florida. Hours of operation, 8 a.m. to 8 p.m. A majority of our tech support are working from home. So you should be able to get anyone at any time within those time periods. Really, really good tech support team. In many instances, depending on who you're talking to, might be the same person that implemented a new feature or even updated the firmware within the Just Add Power system. So when you're dealing with the tech support of Just Add Power, you're really dealing with individuals that have their boots to the ground. They know the system, they work with the system. They're literally not looking through a manual. They know a majority of the control systems out there. All of them are Cisco certified, so you're really dealing with a top-notch group. 5-year warranty when it deals with the individual pieces, all done through Just Add Power. So any system that is out there, there's an RMA process that's done, and it can be initiated through the website. But remember, from previous generation or even current generation, going back 5 years, if you're within that 5-year period itself, those are all going to be covered 100% with Just Add Power warranty. Training could be found on the website. Same way that you would find the demo kits is you're going to go to the justaddpower.com, hover over support, and then you'll see training as well as demo kit. We are having in-person trainings down in Florida, sunny Florida. You'll be able to go down there. 2 days of hands-on training, as well as lodging if you need it, or actually we will lodge you as you will need it. The only thing that you would have to pay for is you actually showing up in Florida, and we'll take care of everything else for you. And that is it. That is a run through of the Just Add Power pieces that can be residential or commercial or resi-mercial, I guess is the new term to say. Being able to live in whatever solution that you need, from our fully dynamic video walls to our scalability factor in size, as well as scalability factor on the individual receivers to have 4K distributed to a 720 TV or even a 1080p TV, but still show 4K on the 4K TV. So fully dynamics in every different way possible that you want to do video distribution, all done through a network. Thanks, guys. Thanks, Snap. Thank you, Gary.